Have you met Lydia? Lydia the tattooed lady.
Pick up the phone.
Hello?
Is it done? Is he gone?
Yeah, it's done. He's gone. They're all gone.
Todd? Who is this?
It's Walt. How are you feeling? Kind of under the weather? Like you've got the flu? That would be the ricin I gave you. I slipped it into that stevia crap that you're always putting in your tea. Oh, my God.
If anyone... If anyone is thinking of taking any chances, just take a look at me. I'm in the intensive care unit. I can't breathe without this. They've had to sew that into my artery. I've got a cannula, another cannula, and a catheter.
I remember having flu-like symptoms, fever, chills, fatigue, generalized muscle and body aches, and thinking, this is probably just the flu. And once I got my flu test back and it came back negative, I was thinking it was probably just another virus that I wasn't tested for. I felt terrible. I'd never felt more ill from any sickness in my life. I've had the flu before, and usually fever and chills last about 2 or 3 days. But once you start reaching day 7 and day 8 with an unrelenting fever, you start wrapping your head around all the things that might be going wrong in your body.
What are the symptoms of ricin poisoning? Ricin is a very dangerous toxin that has some disaster effects on the body. The symptoms depend on the dose received and the route of exposure, but even very small amounts can severely impact many organs. Symptoms can occur as soon as 4 to 6 hours if inhaled. If digested, symptoms can occur in sooner than 10 hours. If inhaled, you will notice some difficulty breathing as well as fever, cough, and nausea. Your lungs would fill with the fluid, making your breathing incredibly difficult. It would be the low blood pressure or the lack of oxygen in your body that would eventually kill you. If for some reason you swallow ricin, you would quickly have bouts of vomiting and diarrhea. To make it worse, there is a very large possibility that blood would be present. To make other matters worse, you would get severely dehydrated and then low blood pressure would occur. Other possible symptoms are seizures and blood in your urine. If untreated for several days, mass organ failure would occur. Such organs would include the liver, spleen, and kidneys.
Even as we learn more about this coronavirus, there are new questions we didn't expect about what else it may be doing to the body. In addition to the respiratory distress it causes, COVID-19 seems to be linked with increases for some patients in inflammation of the heart and other organ and tissue damage. None of these connections are conclusive, but William Brangham explores one of those connections that has a number of doctors concerned.
That's right. One of the many things that we're learning about this novel coronavirus is the impact that it is having on the kidneys. And for that, I'm joined now by Dr. Alan Kleiger. He's at the Yale University School of Medicine, and he co-chairs the COVID-19 response team for the American Society of Nephrology. Dr. Kleiger, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Could you tell me when you first started to learn that what we think of as a respiratory virus is also damaging kidneys?
Well, some of the earliest reports out of China showed that among COVID-positive patients admitted to the hospital, as many as 40 or even 50% had evidence of some damage in the kidney. They had protein in their urine or blood in their urine, and 10% of them even had some decrease in kidney function. So we knew early on that the kidney was one of the targets.
And do we know why the virus impacts the kidneys?
It's not so clear, but there's been a lot of speculation about that.
Let's find out more about ricin and how it can be used as poison. Just how dangerous is it? Joining us from New York is Leonard Cole. He's an expert on bioterrorism and on terror medicine. And of course, we still have with us former Department of Homeland Security Secretary Tom Ridge. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Cole. Just explain to us, what is ricin and how difficult is it to make it?
Well, ricin is a byproduct of the castor bean, which is a naturally found plant. It's in nature. And we derive castor oil from the castor bean. And in the course of processing to get castor oil, one of the unused byproducts is ricin. Now, when ricin is purified, and you have to have some laboratory knowledge to do this, purified and produced in a light powder form that can float and be inhaled, it can be highly dangerous, lethal. 1 or 2 grains of salt would be the equivalent size of the amount of ricin that could be lethal to a human being if a person ingests or inhales it.
That's incredible, and there's no antidote, right? So how common are ricin attacks in the U.S.?
The actual attacks, very, very rare. There have been instances when some white supremacist groups had either had plans to or actually did produce some ricin, and they've been stopped. We generally think of bioattacks as coming from bacteria or fungi like anthrax or a virus like smallpox. But ricin is easily available in terms of the potential for making it into a dangerous material and weapon, but it has not been used extensively by any means.
And what are the symptoms if you've been exposed to ricin?
It's a series. Well, first of all, the effects of ricin, the toxin, is effectively a neurotoxin. It begins to shut down your nervous system. Something like sarin, the nerve agent that was used in the Japanese subways in 1995. So what happens is you begin to get symptoms, unpleasant for sure, dizziness, nausea, a tightness, you're seeing it on the screen, fatigue, and actually after a while, if it gets more severe, you have trouble with your coordination and neurological capabilities, and ultimately death.
There are bits of information that have come out from a number of studies of looking at clinical evaluation of patients that would suggest that there is nervous system direct involvement by the virus, but the reliability of those studies is still in question.
Have you had any encounters with COVID-19, and could you describe them and the symptoms that you've seen with patients with COVID-19?
I'm primarily a neurologist and neurointensivist, but given the volume of patients in the surge in New York City, anyone with any critical care background has been pulled to take care of the COVID patients. So I alternate my time between taking care of COVID patients at night and during the day, and then taking care of neuro or surgically critically ill patients. So what I can say is the COVID patients are extremely sick. This is, ARDS to the exponential level. They're much sicker than the patients we typically care for. And, in terms of what we're seeing neurologically, it's a spectrum. And I think we're probably underestimating what's happening neurologically with these patients because they're all sedated, oftentimes paralyzed. We don't have a neurological exam on them. There's not enough imaging really being done on these patients for many reasons. One, they're hard to transport because they're medically unstable. And then, second, it's a resource situation where everyone is doing, extra work and stretched to the extent that they can. And then, there's often not necessarily clinical suspicion because we can't examine these patients. And so right now we're finding, just as we're starting to try to wake people up to try to wean them off the ventilator, that some of these patients aren't waking up and that they have actually profound hypoxic injury. Even if they didn't have a cardiac arrest, we're seeing imaging that looks like patients with cardiac arrest. That's how profound the hypoxic anoxic brain injury is in some of these folks. We've seen other spectrums of neurological issues anywhere from just straightforward encephalopathy, which is very common, right? Because you have patients without sleep-wake cycles, on various sedations and drugs, and so they're going to be either have delirium or some version of encephalopathy. A lot of them are uremic because the coincidence of renal failure is so high in these patients because of the probably the ACE2 receptor expression in the kidneys is so high. Then we're also seeing things that could be directly related to the virus in the CNS or peripheral nervous system, and then also post-infectious complications. So for direct viral complications, now no one's been able to isolate SARS-CoV-2 in the CSF. I think there was one report of this being done, but it's unclear if there was some cross-contamination or if that was truly positive in the CSF. Issues may be that the assays that we're currently using for the serum are not sensitive for that kind of biospecimen, or that there frankly is not actually virus in the passing the blood-brain barrier. We don't know that yet. Now, one thing that we've thought for a while is that a lot of these patients have a lack of smell, lack of taste. It would make sense that the virus could potentially be traveling retrograde, like up through the cribriform plate, then retrograde along the olfactory bulbs into the skull base. But again, this is just conjecture at this point. We don't really have good pathologic data to back that up yet.
Chad Edmonds is happy to be moving and walking. He's thankful to be alive.
Good. Shoot for 20.
The 44-year-old Cedar Rapids man spent 35 days at Unity Point Health St. Luke's Hospital, recovering from COVID-19. Edmonds says the virus started first as a cough, but after a few days of toughing it out at home, he found himself struggling to breathe and went to St. Luke's ER, where he was admitted to the hospital.
I was on oxygen. By the time I'd been up here for almost 24 hours, my oxygen level was so low. They were giving me over 6 liters of oxygen and still couldn't keep up. That's when a doctor come in and showed me my lungs from 24 hours ago to where they were now, and they were just totally different. I mean, you just tell it's spreading so fast. So that's when they told me they're gonna have to put me on a ventilator.
He spent 15 to 16 days on a ventilator and was later transferred out of the intensive care unit to St. Luke's COVID unit, where he continued to recover and get better, but he remained very weak from the virus.
I mean, everybody was very good to me. I mean, they're very caring. People rooting for you all the time. Nurses happy, cheering you on. So, a lot of support.
About a week ago, he was able to move to St. Luke's Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation to regain strength and get ready to go home.
Horrifying. So, Secretary Ridge, there is an uncomfortable deja vu sense about all of this. We're told that there is no connection, or none has been established anyway, between the terrorist attacks here in Boston and the RICIN letters. But it does have an echo of what happened after 9/11 with those anthrax attacks. What are your thoughts when you hear about these RICIN letters?
Well, you use the right word. It has a resounding echo.
Members of the NYPD Emergency Service Unit who came in contact with the letter that was opened at the city's mail facility on Gold Street here in Manhattan on Friday. They are being examined for what are described as minor symptoms of RICIN exposure, a very significant development, potentially very, very disturbing. A letter sent to the mayor of New York, initially testing positive for RICIN. Dr. Anthony Fauci of the National Institute of Health is joining us right now. Dr. Fauci, tell us a little bit about RICIN exposure and what potentially this could mean to someone who went through and touched that letter or inhaled RICIN from one of those letters.
Well, it's one of the most toxic and deadly substances that you can actually have. So the idea of exposing someone to it where it could actually get into the system can be really very destructive. So something like that is clearly an attempt to cause significant and serious damage to the person who would get exposed to it.
Well, this is one very strong and remarkable woman who makes a career as a nurse at the VA hospital, but someone had to come to her aid when she came in contact with the coronavirus.
Physically, my body went through a beating.
The past few weeks have been absolute misery for Detroit native Shyla Harper.
It was a nightmare. It was sudden. I wasn't expecting to be diagnosed with COVID-19. It was heart-wrenching for my family.
For days, the mother of three was in the battle of her life with the COVID-19 virus.
It will hit you with no warning. It hits everyone differently. Some people have symptoms, some people don't. Some people survive, some people don't.
I'm a miracle. Yeah, I'm a miracle. A lot of people in the hospital call me medical miracle.
18 days on a ventilator, nearly 30 days in the ICU.
And I'll take this syringe here.
3 times intubated, a tracheostomy. His throat healing, he still eats through a tube.
Right here is my stomach tube.
At the worst, his heart nearly stopped beating. The miracle, he's alive.
Is there a point where you realized this may be it?
There was a point where it hurt to take even one breath. And I did actually at one time just want to die.
A suspect was arrested today for sending letters laced with ricin to President Obama and Mississippi Senator Roger Wicker. So what is ricin, how is it made, and what makes it so deadly? Ricin is a poison that's found in castor beans. The castor bean is used to create castor oil, which has been used as a medicine all the way back to ancient Egypt. Ricin's made from the stuff that's left over after the castor beans are processed. Ricin can come in a powder, a mist, or a pellet form. It's dangerous when you inhale it, if you ingest it, or if it's injected. One of the most famous uses of ricin was during the Cold War in 1978, when this writer was jabbed with an umbrella tip that injected a ricin pellet into his body. In the 1980s, it was reportedly used as a warfare agent, most likely a gas, in Iraq. And it works by getting into the cells of a person's body and stopping them from making proteins. Without proteins, cells begin to die. One of the most dangerous things about ricin is that the symptoms from the poisoning start off looking like a cold or a flu, trouble breathing, nausea, coughing, fever, and if you ingest it, vomiting and diarrhea. Now, ricin poisoning isn't contagious, and you can't get symptoms from just touching ricin, though it could cause redness or pain if it gets in your skin or in your eyes. The danger in contact with it is that you could touch it or touch someone that has it on them and then transfer some of it to yourself through touching food and then eating it. Inhaling or ingesting a large amount of it can be fatal within 36 to 72 hours. The other dangerous thing about ricin is that there's no real antidote. The only way to counteract it is for doctors to remove as much of it from an exposed person's system as they can and then just treat the actual symptoms.
Well, my docket was cleared, so I stopped by the mall to pick up your homecoming dress. I am a great mom. I'll see you for dinner, sweetie.
There's no DNA match in the database.
I don't understand. Why would a chemical attack leave behind another person's DNA inside the victim?
What if the metahuman we're looking for doesn't control gas? What if he becomes it?
Judge Howard. It's nice to see you again.
You died.
You say that like it was an accident. Remember the last thing you said to me in the courtroom? May God have mercy on your soul.